You're listening to the Crisis Cop podcast on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network.
The word legacy is used a lot nowadays. However, our next guest is the capital L in legacy, especially in the world of hostage negotiations. Bob Beach spent over 50 years in law enforcement. He became a hostage negotiator in the early 80s and helped start the Metro Washington Group in 1985. This group brought negotiators from DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia together to share expertise, knowledge, and training. Bob is going to share his knowledge, expertise, and stories in this episode of the Crisis Cop Podcast. Welcome to the Crisis Cop Podcast. I'm your host, Pat Doering, and today we're lucky enough to have someone with over 50 years of law enforcement experience. That's right, I said 50 years. Chief Robert Beach. Chief, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Pat, and call me Bob. I try to keep that low profile, you know.
Will do, Bob. I'm just one of those guys that, if you're chief, I'm going to call you chief, but we'll go with Bob for the rest of this episode. So, Bob, tell us a little bit about your career. One of the reasons that I got you on is because you spent a lot of time as a negotiator in the Virginia area. So let's just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I actually started my career walking a foot beat in a community called Lynchburg, Virginia, moderate-sized department, about 200 people. Walking a foot beat on midnight, and I managed to stay there about 5 years. I was born and raised in that area in South Central Virginia, and I did about everything. I eventually was a sergeant, got the chance to go to Northern Virginia, more money, more experience, and so forth. And I went on a small town department up there who was run by a family friend, coincident friend, and town of Herndon Police Department. And I was a training officer and a acting sergeant there, and a SWAT team. I was a gas munitions guy, SWAT, and stayed there, though, a short period of time because the Fairfax County Police Department, which is the largest department in the state of Virginia, bigger than the state police, and right outside of DC, and with all of the bells and whistles, everything in law enforcement you could do was there. So I swapped over there in 1977 and ended up being on patrol and doing a little bit of everything. I eventually got tapped to go teach at the academy because I'd had obviously some experience. Taught at the academy a couple of years. Then I got promoted and I went into K9. Best job I ever had in my life. I ran the K9 unit. I had 18 guys and I had a dog. I stayed there actually through 2 promotions, which was unheard of, but had some great mentors. I love that job. If I could do that again today, I'd still do it. But in the middle of all of that, I ended up getting bit by the hostage negotiator bug, and I tried out for the team. They had a process in 82, and I tried out for the team there and was selected. And about 3 years later, the then head of the team decided to leave, and I ended up running the team. And I had 18 hostage negotiators, and I ran that team from 82 until the day I retired. I went on my last call out the day before I retired in 2020, in 2002.
Wow, fascinating career. So what drew you to the negotiation field? I know you said K9 was your love. Hurts my feelings a little bit because negotiations is my love. But
well,
what drew you to the negotiation field?
That's interesting you say that. When I eventually had to leave K9 because I got promoted to a first lieutenant, and they wouldn't let me stay holding that rank. Gotcha. But by that time, I had been very much absorbed in the negotiation. And so to answer your question, I had in the 70s, of course, what we were facing as a culture and a world was hostage taking. Right. Terrorism was all over the world, and their biggest weapon was taking hostages. The Achille Laurel, the issues at the Olympics. All of those things were going on. They had something in those early days called LEAP, which was law enforcement. Money the government was giving cops to go to school, and so I went to. I started taking classes in psychology, criminal behavior, those type things. But I got bit by the terrorism thing, and I know you know about the New York effort to develop the model that is the model for hostage negotiation around the world. But the commander there, who was a Jew, by the way, realized that terrorism was probably going to come to New York. And so he decided to come up with a plan, a model. And Simon Isendorfer, that name may ring a bell to you. Yeah. And I read Boltz's book, Hostage Cop, and all those things. And it just so happened that at Fairfax, we had a guy that was coming and teaching hostage negotiation for us to our people a couple of times a year. His name was Harvey Schlossberg. And I got to know Harvey, and Harvey became a great mentor to me in a lot of different ways. I learned his model, and it became the Bible to me. It's very interesting. He would always tell his story that they produced this model, and they said, wonder what other people will think about it, and gave it to the FBI. Months went by, and he never heard any more back. And so he eventually called somebody there, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's our model. That's the one we're using now." So anyway, I got bit by that, and between the psychology and that type of training, and just watching what the world was doing, I fell in love with the process. First of all, as a cop, the goal, I happen to have two boys that are still in law enforcement, and interesting. One of them is a hostage negotiator. The fact of the matter is, it became, for a cop, you cut me, I bleed blue. It is about responding, addressing issues, bringing fruition to it, to resolve it, so that the community and the world can get back and victims can be safe and all those things. And so it became a passion to me. And in all my career, I was doing all kinds of different things. Most of my career was spent in special operations side of law enforcement. So I tell people, for the last 20 years of my career, I was on call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and I loved it. Yeah, it was a detriment to my family and so forth, I'm sure, and probably to my health, but that was it. So that's what drew me there. And as more and more I got involved in it, the more I wanted to get deeper. Went to work for a group called Strategic Interaction, a guy by the name of David Swink, and they were doing a bunch of crisis management type of training for Secret Service, for all kinds of government contracts. And I would go there, and I did a lot of role playing. I played a great crazy guy. I played a great antisocial. And so I could do that. But in doing so, you get to learn that mindset.
Right.
You get to try to gather yourself. And that was one of the things I loved to do as a negotiator, was to hear the person you're working with and sense what their drive is, because that's how you're going to work it. You're going to eventually get to that drive and help them see the other side of whatever they're trying to do. And so that's kind of how I got started.
Gotcha. So something I've kind of learned throughout my career is the negotiation community, I think, is a very tight-knit community. We're not really that big, and I think just the relationships we develop and just the amount of sharing information, I think, is one of the things I've not really seen a lot of in law enforcement. I think negotiators are a little different breed. But tell me a little bit about that relationship you had. I know you had Bill Kidd out of San Francisco, and you had Tony Hare out of Oakland, and especially back in those days, it's probably harder to communicate. I mean, we didn't have the internet and all the fancy communications. But what I learned is a lot of you guys communicated, especially early on, just different strategies. Can you, if you just want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. First of all, Schlossberg would come and teach, and I would pick his brain. We'd go to lunch, or we'd say, and I pick his brain, and I learned so much about. First of all, you mentioned Tony Hare, you mentioned Billy Kidd. There was the commander of the Prince George's County, Bill Hogwood.
Yeah, Bill.
Bill Hogwood. We became kind of a little group, and you're right. At the time, all we had was the Baltimore Conference. That Baltimore Conference met once a year, and all of us would meet there, 600, 700 negotiators. The place would pack out. I was fortunate enough to present there a couple of times, but you're exactly right. It's a tight-knit group. But I will tell you, one of the things and a principle that we put in place was, as we selected negotiators, we wanted people that were sold out for learning and doing the job. There were guys that I interviewed over the years that wanted to wear the negotiators pin on their uniform,
right,
but they weren't negotiators. Okay, so we didn't take those people. Actually, there are those three, and then George Flanagan. That name may not mean anything to you, but George was he was with Metropolitan Police Department in London. He served in Northern Ireland. He and I did a lot of traveling and teaching together over the years, and he was another one. So, but all of us would combine, and we would talk. We would try to find ways to get together. We'd try to put together training sessions together. I would bring those guys to the East Coast. They would bring me to the West Coast. So that's how we spent our time. What's interesting is that we would sit together. Tony Hare is a great example. We would sit together and we talk about a case that we had or a case that we knew about. And that would end up sparking us to think, well, what would we do? How would we do that?
Right. Yeah.
And then our goal was to share that. It is a small group, but I believe, because I got to be honest with you, in those years, especially in the 80s, there was a lot of people that were reporting to be hostage negotiation experts and teaching it, and had a total number of experiences of one maybe.
Right.
Okay. And I had 200, when the time I quit, I had 252 cases that I'd done. Okay. Hostage or barricade cases in that career. The other guys had done the same thing. So Tony did we got to talking about it, and we were reviewing a case. I don't remember what it was at the time, but all of the things that were being taught, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. If this happened, you do this. None of them were working. And so Tony produced a program that was a 4-hour program that we were presenting to negotiation teams, called What to Do When the Rules Don't Work.
Right.
And there is a process to do that. But we would spend lots of time just talking on the phone or chatting back and forth, trying to get together whenever we could.
So looking back on some skill sets, what do you think an important skill set is if you want to be a negotiator, and what did you do to sharpen some of those skills?
Well, like I said, I took this job of strategic interaction with the intent of learning those and practicing those skills, deepening my understanding of crisis. and people in crisis. So I would read any book I could read. I would continue to take psychology classes and stuff like that, all of those things, and just pick the brains of people that were doing the work. One of the things that I learned from Harvey was that there was, and even in our area, we put together here I put together in Northern Virginia a group called Northern Virginia Regional Hostage Negotiators Group. It was made up of negotiators from all the departments regionally, and a couple from over in Maryland. Bill Hogwood's people joined us, and the Metropolitan Police Department joined us. And we would get together and we talk about things, we share things. But one of the things that we learned there was a total misunderstanding by most places. And Harvey taught me this very early on. This was always intended to be a team effort. It was always intended to be made up of three components: the leadership, or the command. Mm-hmm. They were the people that were going to have to make harsh decisions, but then a tactical operation that was skilled and resourced, because listen, there's no reason to negotiate if they don't face the threat of death.
Right.
And then that the negotiations at a high level of capabilities, competence, technology, resources, all of that stuff. Those three working together. We actually had agencies in the early days. I actually know one situation where an officer was killed, a responding officer, when the tactical team and the negotiation team would race to the scene to see who would get there first to engage.
Jeez.
Horrible.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And the system fails when one element of that, if you don't believe it, look at Waco, look at Ruby Ridge. You find that if you don't have strong leadership that knows, why did the FBI then train all of those so that you had specific people to go to the scene to be leaders of that operation? So that it had to be a team effort. And that process was very, very important. And so what we did was I did as much work as I could in our agency. For example, we put on what we call a hostage negotiation school twice a year, and we put everybody in it. We did a special one just for commanders, and as to what their job was. You know what their job wasn't? Their job wasn't negotiating.
Right.
Their job wasn't throwing tear gas. Their job was to be the incident commander and to teach them what that job entailed. And then I made sure that, for example, all of our SWAT team guys had to go through the negotiator school. And all of my negotiators had to go through elements of the SWAT school. And whenever that, for the example, the Baltimore conference every year, I always took at least 3 of the SWAT team guys with us when we went to that. And I encouraged one of the commanders to go. Somebody from we had something called OSB, the Operation Support Bureau. And I always encouraged that bureau commander to go because he was going to be the guy or the gal. And so working on that team effort was really became our biggest focus. And we became very, very good at it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things when you look at some of these incidents when they go bad. I think they lack those 3 components, like you said. You know, that important leadership, the tactical edge, and then the negotiation. All 3 of those have to work in unison. And I think when you look at some of these bad situations, they're always missing something in that. And we call it the triangle. You know, that perfect triangle. You have to have all 3 of those sides basically committed to the same job, the same goal. So speaking of that. I know early on, and even today, we unfortunately find there's some resistance to the negotiation aspect. Why do you think that is, and what did you basically do in your career to kind of meet some of that resistance or kind of educate? I think a lot of it just has to go with educating, what we actually do.
Well, it's interesting that you bring it up, and I'll share a case with you here in a minute. Uh, I used to call it the West Coast effect. I don't want to offend anybody, but the fact of the matter is, there was what I call the LA effect. It was, whether you had the TV show or any of that other about SWAT and how it all worked. And a lot of agencies saw negotiators as being uh, a delay tactic, and you try to de-escalate, but when it looked like it's not working, then the overall is going to be a tactical response. And I have Schlossberg was so important about explaining the process, and I still believe that sometimes we have as a culture in negotiations around the country the belief that the negotiator is a touchy-feely guy that goes in and tries to understand the background of the guy and try to de-escalate. And I tell them that is true. That's a big part of what we do. But the goal the goal of the hostage negotiator is the same as the SWAT team guy, the same as the executive commander, and that is to resolve the event. And we use all the skills and all the abilities and all those things to make that decision on how to resolve it. And so sometimes the hostage negotiator's responsibility is to ask the guy to look out the window and see if that's the right color Buick.
Right.
Okay. So, and not understand, there was a period of time when there was this big argument in the field about whether or not you should tell a negotiator that there's going to be a tactical movement. And I always thought that was so stupid. We can be as much of an asset. Now, if you've got a hostage negotiator that can't handle it, well, you got the wrong negotiator.
Right.
But having everybody working together as a team is and doing their role, staying in their track. We had a case, I had a case that I did it out at the con, and I did it at Baltimore, and where I was really trying to make this point. I call it the Aunt Jen case, and it was it occurred back in 1982. And what we had was, I had a lady, she was mentally ill. She had never been formally treated for a mental illness, but she had really gone downhill badly, and she would fly off the handle. And as a matter of fact, we learned fairly early on in our intelligence gathering that she had barricaded herself a couple of different times. She lived in Baltimore, and but she had moved over about a 3-day period. She had moved down with her daughter and son-in-law down to Virginia. And this Sunday morning, it was a beautiful, I never will forget it. It was a beautiful February Sunday morning. It was one of those mornings where it was not freezing cold. It was nice and bright sun. There was, by the way, there was no big news going on. So all the media was there. What had happened is Aunt Jen had gotten up that morning. She felt that she was being betrayed by the family. They were going to try to put her in a home. She had, unbeknownst to them, brought a handgun with her when she came. And she came into the kitchen area where the son-in-law was getting ready to fix breakfast. And she started an argument with him, pulled a gun, shot him in the leg. He manages to run out. The daughter comes out. She sees him. She turns the gun on her. The daughter jumps out a window, and the barricade starts. Cops get on the scene. And so we start now. Another thing, remembering that what I said about organization and a team effort, the first thing that we did with my team, as soon as we got the call, the first thing I did was started gathering intelligence about the whole circumstance, what's going on. And when I got on the scene, as my first negotiator arrived, the first assignment was not the primary negotiator. First assignment was intelligence gathering. We had forms, and this is before computers, obviously. So we had forms and all those things, and we were to do a massive intelligence gathering. We were gathering intelligence for not only us in our negotiation, but for the tactical people. What's the place look like inside? Where are the phones? What are all of those issues? For the incident commander, what are the things you got to worry about in the community? All of those things. My intelligence function generally was at least two, and that was their job, constantly looking and gathering intelligence and then debriefing everybody. We debriefed for the tactical team. We debriefed the incident commander and obviously debriefed the negotiators. And then we started to I would assign the primary and the secondary negotiator. And I actually had somebody else I called the listener, a safe model observer. And sometimes we would always have a mental health person there. So we had a pretty big contingent of people and we were fortunate. I give it to you. If you're a department of 6, you don't have that. But that's the reason a department of 6 shouldn't do it. Okay. Department of 6 should pick somebody that has the skills, abilities, and the training. We could talk about that some other day. But I have encouraged a number of departments to give up carrying the SWAT badge or the negotiator badge, because let me tell you something. The public adds to that badge an expectation. And if you screw it up, it's bad. Okay, so, but Aunt Jen, we learned fairly early on in the intelligence gathering that she had barricaded herself a couple of times, but her son, by the name of Tony, had always been able to reach her, calm her down, and the 2 times she done it, talk her out. So we sent for Tony. Now, Tony was in Baltimore. We eventually got him down in a couple of hours, and he came to the scene, and we put him on the phone. Lots of on and off the phone. She wouldn't pick up the phone. She picked the phone up, lay it down. All of those things. We did the voice to voice. We did all of that stuff. But once Tony got there, we all put our head together and we said, let's get Tony an opportunity. And so we put Tony out front with one of my negotiators, Charlie Bond, and he started to call out to his mom, ask her to pick up the phone. And once she picked the phone up, primary negotiator Mike Spradlin was on the phone with her and immediately brought Tony back. We put Tony on the phone, and Tony, they got to crying together and so forth. And she was still, no, I'm not coming out. I'm not. Y'all just want to do this. And eventually, Tony starts crying. She starts crying. She says, okay, Tony, I'm in my house coat. Let me put on a dress and I'll come out. Well, man, we were high-fiving. It was great. Mm-hmm. About that time, I hear the tactical people put tear gas into the house.
Oh, geez.
And they tear gas the house a couple of times. And we never hear anymore from Aunt Jen. She goes into the basement, takes a gun, puts it to her head, and kills herself. It was awful. Now, what happened? Well, what happened was people didn't stay their lane. It was a beautiful February day. All the media was there. And so the command post, the incident commander of that day, decided to take a stroll outside, and he never heard that conversation with Tony. And we'd been there probably 6-7 hours by that time. He gave the okay for the SWAT guys to go ahead and take the place. And that's what happened. Now, that's not the end of the story. It just so happened a lot of people, me in particular, were extremely upset. And we had an audio recording of the whole thing. So I had to wait about 4 days till I calmed down. And then I went into the incident commander and I brought the tape. And I said, I want you to hear something. And I played the tape. And you could see it come over his face. He said, I never heard that. I said, I know you didn't. Why didn't you hear it? I said, because you left your post. I said, that's not your job. Your job is to stay there and that is what your job is. Well, it just so happens that he gets transferred in about 30 days, get a new commander who eventually becomes deputy chief there in Fairfax, by the way. But as soon as he got in position as the OSB commander, I went in the next day after he was there and I played him the tape. And I explained the situation. Well, about, I guess 2-3 weeks later, we had a homicide. Man kills his wife, leaves her laying on the front sidewalk, and barricades himself in the house. And we start the process over again. And unfortunately, we had to we had to eventually assault that place and take it. But the real key is that I looked outside we had a vehicle that we used for the negotiators that held primary, secondary, mental health. Just a small number of people could meet in it, but it was our workspace. We carried it with us everywhere we went. That was a critical part too, having that resource, because our environment was always with us. We didn't have to make it up. But anyway, I looked out the window and I saw the incident commander stepped outside the command bus, standing on the steps. I went out, I stepped out my door and I looked at him, and he looked at me and he said, "I know, I'm back." And he went back in. So, but from that point on, we really, as an agency, we really started to grasp hold of that. But the on-gen case was very significant. Man, we had one called Simply Spaghetti.
Mm-hmm.
That was the guy's name. He was a nut too, a crazy guy, mentally ill. Came on the balcony. It was a big apartment complex. Came right on the balcony and started shooting holes in the windshield of the cars in the parking lot. And we surrounded the place. We were there about 14 hours. We did everything wrong. We gassed the wrong apartment twice. We had 2 officers injured with shrapnel from the guy shooting. A lot of different things happening. We took the family of the guy and housed them in a cemetery across the street in the room where they select caskets. There was a lot of things that we did wrong. But when we go back, when we did the critique of that, what was so good was we did the critique, and this was before our gen. We did the critique of that. Everybody slapping their back, what a great job we did, all like that. Well, me and the tactical team commander, we said, "Are you guys crazy? Do you see what we did? Do you see what failure it was? We have to be more precise in our managing and running these things." And that did start to turn around the process, but on-gen did it.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you talk about that, I think sometimes we misconstrue luck with good tactics. Sometimes we get lucky and we think, "Oh, that went well." And then what else really helps with that is when we do one of those good debriefs and actually talk about some of the mistakes we made, and then hopefully correct those mistakes in future endeavors so we don't have to deal with that again.
Well, what's critical about the Simply Spaghetti case is that that's exactly what happened. The chief of police got briefed on what happened on that thing, and he called in a great mentor of mine, Don Harper, who had been, man, he ran Operations Support Bureau for a number of years, but retired, took over as the chief of police, a couple of different agencies, and they called Don in to do a critique of that incident, and he lit it on fire. I mean, so having people that are willing to hear the truth and then respond to it and fix it is key. I believe I served at Fairfax County Police Department during a period of time where we had the greatest set of leaders and a great organization. We were training cops from all over the world in how to do things. I took hostage negotiation and carried it to Eastern Europe and to Africa and a little bit of everywhere because we had a reputation of doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Not so now, I'm sorry to say, but I'm not there. So.
All right. Well, we're going to take a little small break here from Crisis Cop Podcast. We'll take a break and be back in a minute.
Thought about a career in voiceover? Need a great, cost-effective on-hold message for your organization or business? Don't know where to start? Check out The Voice Farm, your one-stop shop for voiceover needs. Check it out now by accessing the Voice Farm at voicefarmers.com and see what difference can be made with a company that is truly outside the box. From the Voice Box, voicefarmers.com. That's voicefarmers.com.
Wouldn't it be cool if your advertising could last forever? It can with perpetual advertising. Here's how it works. Unlike TV or radio ads, where every instance the ads are broadcast, they're only played once and lost forever. Perpetual advertising can have repeat exposure and replayability weeks, months, and even years after they're inserted in a podcast. So even if a podcast is a few years old, your ads will still be impactful to repeat listeners, as well as new listeners. This gives your advertising dollar the most bang for the buck. Find out more about perpetual advertising at twoguystalking.com/sponsors.
Have you got a cool voice? Do you like to act? Are you quick when it comes to thinking on your feet? Want to help propel the future of training crisis negotiators across the globe and foster the future of law enforcement? We need you. It doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter where you're from. Doesn't matter what's on your plate. We want your voice to help us evolve the way that law enforcement interacts and succeeds when it comes to crisis negotiation. Ready to get started? Access BlueBaggersProject.com and start your role-playing voice adventure today. BlueBaggersProject.com. That's BlueBaggersProject.com.
All right, welcome back to the Crisis Cop podcast. We're here with Bob Beach with 50 years of law enforcement experience, and a lot of those as a crisis hostage negotiator. So, Bob, one of the things I kind of asked and just from my experience too, is this, and you kind of even mentioned that you were on call 24/7, 7 days a week, which puts a big toll, a strain on you as a person. So how did you cope with that? What were some of the things you did that helped you kind of deal with the stressors of being a negotiator?
Well, let me tell you that it took its toll in that it certainly did stress my family. I ended up getting a divorce after 38 years, really.
Wow.
It was a lot of that I equate to the fact that I had become so passionate about the law enforcement side that I had forgotten what the real things that my dad taught me years and years ago, which were important: God, family, and then job.
Yeah.
And so, so to answer your question, I never turned. I wasn't wasn't a drunk. I didn't use drugs. I probably ate too much. That's still a problem I struggle with. As a cop, you learn to eat very fast.
Oh yeah.
So you overeat because you eat too much too quick. But I got to be honest with you. When you asked that question, I try to think if I ever became washed out, ever became just, and I can honestly say no. The moment the phone would ring or the moment that the call would come, the energy would flow, and it would flow until it was over. Now, I may crash and sleep but many times, and this was, I think, had something to do with, there were many times when we'd be on a call out and we'd work a call out 8, 10, 12 hours and get off that call and then go right straight to the office to whatever my job was.
Right.
I ran the traffic division for a number of years. I ran a district station as a captain, all those things. So, but I was so enamored with the job, and it's probably shortened my life a little bit.
So sometimes we in law enforcement field, sometimes it whether it happens to us or we look back on it, there's some humorous things that happen. Maybe we don't realize that in the moment, but looking back on some of the incidents you had, was there anything that kind of came back to you as like, you know what, that was actually a kind of funny, humorous moment?
Well, my goodness. Oh yes. I had a brand new negotiator. It was a female negotiator. She was just all fired up, and she had been through all the training, was really good at dealing with people, her experience on the road and all. And so the very first call out that she get, and she's so excited, her responsibility was to pick up the negotiated vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And she ran the thing under a low-hanging bridge and destroyed it.
Oh no.
Nobody thought it was funny at the time, but as I look back and I watched as this all fired up young lady was just crumbling, but it was kind of humorous. I thought it was humorous anyway. We got it fixed, and it was okay. The Simply Spaghetti one was kind of funny when the gas guy got to putting the gas in the apartment. What he didn't forgot was when he was shooting over top of a pickup truck, and when the round would come out the end of the gas gun and the fins would flare out, they'd hit the back of the truck and flip it up, and it went. And he did it not once but twice. That was funny. It was not funny at the time, but when you look back on it, it was funny.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on this. You helped form that Metro Washington group. Tell us the importance of getting together as a group of negotiators in that area and how important that was for just the entire area, the community, and the negotiators.
Well, and it was so important because we had a hostage barricade case in an area called Seven Corners. In that area, it happens to be where Arlington County, Falls Church, and the county of Fairfax all come together in this one area. And we had a guy, it was a home invasion. They went into a home invasion, and then they took the owner who owned a jewelry store and a shopping mall in that corner and carried him there to rob the place. Well, unfortunately for them, when they left to take him there, one of the house members got us loose and called the cops. And so we ended up getting there, captured, surrounding them in the place. When I got there, there was like 8 lines of police tape because every agency was there and had. But what we were able to do, because when we to start the negotiation and the overall process, because of that hostage negotiation group, we were able to draw every resource that we need. And we had people there. We knew each other. We had trained. We used each other's equipment. We knew all of that, and it was and very successful. We managed to get our 8 hostages, capture the bad guy, all of that. It was a great operation, and that was one of those times. But there were many times when we would have very long operations, and it was the ability to be able to bring people from Arlington in to be part of the negotiation process and the SWAT process, whatever it is was needed. Right. That became so critical in long drawn out cases.
Yeah, it's so beneficial, especially like you said, training with someone because you had that confidence. We were lucky enough in the St. Louis region, we had a similar thing to where we had I think 6 or 7 different teams. We would meet once every 6 months and do kind of what you did. We would do some training. We would do some, what's going on in our area. But the biggest thing was when we had an incident, because we in St. Charles County, which we're just outside St. Louis, we would go into St. Louis City and St. Louis County to work operations, but we were comfortable because we had already known those people and made those connections. And I think that's really important, especially in the negotiation field.
We had moved to a point, well, the last probably 5 years, I was running the operation where we were responding whenever the tactical team responded for a critical incident, whether it be a no-knock warrant or something like that. They would send a skeleton team of negotiators, generally 3. First of all, to do the intelligence. The intelligence cannot tell you how important it is that we have that full breadth of intelligence in the process. And so being there. And so that that stresses. We actually had one time in my career where we had 2 cases going at once. So again, the necessity of having that backup and that ability was very important. Just in equipment alone, in the old days when you had one hostage phone. Now we had technical people that built us a set of phones, so we actually had 2. But that was a big deal. I tell you the other thing, and I wanted to mention this earlier. You had asked. I saw as one of the questions we talked about active listening and those skills.
Yeah.
When I became a negotiator, the thing that became, to me, the 2 greatest tools that I had as a primary negotiator was active listening, and particularly I like the paraphrasing process. One of the things I was watching a show the other night. My wife and I have a tendency to watch a lot of these crime shows on TV. And I shouldn't do that because you get a bad taste after a while. But I was watching, and they had a barricade. That a guy that had killed somebody, and he was barricaded in some sort of store or something. And I was listening to the negotiation. They had some clips of the negotiation, and it was so obvious how that the negotiator, in talking to this guy, was totally missing him in the conversation. He was talking about one thing, and the negotiator was talking about something completely different. And so the active listening process of paraphrasing back what you're hearing really builds a sense of, not only from the bad guy's perspective that you hear what they're saying, but it also helps you clarify where you're at in the negotiation and what's going on. And I worked with a guy, and I really would encourage you, if you get a chance, to reach out to Dr. Mitch Hammer. Dr. Mitch Hammer is a professor emeritus at American University. He was spoke on his expertise was in communication, crisis communication. He, by the way, was the original. He identified the Unabomber by his writing. He was the guy that did that for the FBI. But Mitch and I became good friends, and he developed, and he's written a couple of books. McMains and Mullins have mentioned it. It's called the SAFE model. And we installed the SAFE model very early on when Mitch came and became a part of our effort. He showed up to a lot of our calls, and we used him. But by using the frames, the SAFE model frames, to determine what the conversation, what frame is a conversation in: substantive, attunement, face, emotion. Because if I, as a negotiator, am in the frame with him, we're not missing each other when we're communicating. And the SAFE model became very, very important for us. I would always assign, generally it was me, we would, after every phone call communication, we'd go over, everybody in the negotiator truck had to give their feedback of what they heard and what they thought. And one of the things we want to do is make sure that we're staying in the frame with the guy or gal that we're dealing with, so that our communication becomes real. Right. I mean, that's how this works. Okay, is that communication process. So I really encourage you get a chance, you ought to get him and reach out to him. He's
definitely.
He lives up in Maryland, and he's written a couple of books. He does some good stuff.
All right, Bob. So I'm a new negotiator. I'm getting ready to do that selection process, or looking at hey, this might be some interest to me. What advice would you give a new negotiator that's wanting to try and get into the field, or just looking at maybe this might be something for me?
Great question, because I would have that question a lot. I mean, over the years, a lot of cops come to me and say, I was fortunate enough that in my 18 folks that I had there, I had three people that were not police officers. They were, I had 2 of our 911 operators, and I had one victim services staff member. they had gotten enamored. And man, can you think of anybody that's a better communicator than a lot of these 911 people?
Right.
But I'd have a lot of cops that would come and want to do it. And first thing I tell them, please take the time to learn the field. Man, read the books, understand what it is. Don't take it from watching TV. That ain't it. Learn it before you come forward. And then when you come forward, make sure that it's what you want to do. Okay, that you're willing to put the effort in to be and keep up. You know, the big thing that I see facing the hostage negotiation team today. In my day, we would take and we quickly seize phone lines and do all kinds of, man, the technology now. My son was talking about they did a case not too long ago that the first part of the majority was with text. So learn the skills and take the time to prepare yourself as to what it really is. Then decide if you want to go forward. If you want to go forward, then figure out what the process is. I'll tell you what I look for. Whenever anybody applied, I always look for a couple things. I would want to know what they've done to prepare themselves. What's their background? What classes have they took? What have they done to prepare themselves? Second, I want to look at their past performance evaluations, and I want to talk to their sergeant or their lieutenant and find out how do they deal with people when they're in crisis? What happens when they're in stress?
Right.
How do they handle those things? So those are the type of things that I would look at as we move forward.
And you kind of mentioned this earlier. There's some of those people that just wanted that pin, right? So as jobs as the team leaders, commanders, we had to try and figure out who those people were. We always were looking for those people, and I like to call it the people that were drinking the Kool-Aid. You could tell almost immediately just by the one or two questions. Man, they're into this. They want to do this job, and like we said, they're drinking the Kool-Aid. So those were the people that's the people I found that were the good negotiators. They were the ones that were reading the books, taking the classes. Those were the people we were really looking forward to.
I did a thing where I would take every time we'd have they would come in for a panel interview. I had two of my negotiators and myself, and we'd interview the people. And one of the things they would do when they come in, there would be a phone sitting on the table in front of them. And we'd give them a brief synopsis that there's a case on the that's alive, and that phone may ring at any minute. When it rings, pick it up and start negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if they were smart, they looked and saw the wire didn't go anywhere. Okay. Because the goal is to see how they reacted and how the stress of that, how are they going to be able to handle that?
Mm-hmm.
And then we would ask them questions and so forth. You'd watch them. Every one of them would watch that phone. They'd look at that phone to see. You're looking for people that can handle that type. Because listen, we had a doctor that barricaded himself in he was actually from down here in Central Virginia. He had a bunch of personal problems. He'd gone to a hotel up in Northern Virginia and was threatening to commit suicide. And Beth Benham, as far as I'm concerned, Beth Benham was the greatest hostage negotiator I have ever met in my life. She did a job on that case where she actually had to do a self-reveal about a case. She was involved in an automobile accident that killed a guy. And she did a self-reveal, and the pressure in that case was just something just phenomenal. And to watch how under that pressure, her ability to be able to reason and sort through and then come up with a plan as to how to deal with that, it was very, very important. So I was always looking for that one, as you said, that has prepared themselves and that can handle that. And listen, it comes out in their career. It really does.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I wouldn't take anybody that didn't have at least 7 years on, because we had a situation in Fairfax where with these extra duties and capabilities, you got more money.
Mhm.
So a lot of people wanted to wear the pin.
Yeah.
See,
Well, unfortunately, and you kind of brought this up, we're facing something in law enforcement to where it's difficult to get cops in the door anymore. Now it's just hard enough getting cops in the door. Now imagine trying to get people that want to be negotiators. So what we found in the last 5-6 years is the pool is really small, and it's one of those things that we're trying to figure out, how do we get back to where we're to a point where back in the day, I mean, we would put a posting for negotiator and man, you'd get 20 people
20
in,
people.
you know. Now it's you're lucky to find 1 or 2 people that won't even take on these responsibilities.
The profession in the last decade has really when I left my retired from my chief position, the every agency was starting to struggle to find people. And as you said, the gene pool, listen, not everybody can be a cop. I've said that all my life. There takes a special person that's willing to do what we do. And that's difficult. And we have reduced that pool by the way that we've treated our law enforcement in the last decade. Now, is it going to change? I think so. I think the page is flipping, and I think it'll get better. But I know departments, even my former department, Fairfax, 300 people short.
Yeah,
That's a lot of people. And then when
right.
you figure, and I tell, as this process started, most of the public doesn't realize you can go ahead and hire. The county can go ahead and hire a plumber, and that person can more than likely step in within a week and start doing his job.
Right.
It's a year. If you're taking a brand new person, never done it before, it's at least a year to get him on the street, and then another 6 months till it gets to the point that you're able to let him do it on his own.
Right.
So it's not a quick turnaround. And when you start talking about trying to fill 300 spots, and when I was in with my last assignment at Fairfax before I retired, I was a director of the academy, and I would train 60 to 70 people in an academy class and 2 academy classes a year. You couldn't keep up with the turnover between retirements and so forth. So it's a big deal. So you're right. But I think standing, especially for the jobs that we're talking about, a negotiator, standing the line and finding people with a passion to do that type of work, that passion is exposed by their preparation prior to diving into it, and then their ability to maintain their skills and capabilities. I would always ask new cops what they're reading, and that our job as a professional law enforcement officer doesn't stop when you leave the academy.
Right.
And that 1 week, twice a year doesn't cover it. It's what you do every day, especially in today's world.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about stuff outside of negotiation law enforcement. What are some things you did as hobbies, or what are you doing now to kind of keep yourself busy and occupied?
Well, the place where I live here, the 15 October Ranch, is the room that I'm sitting in here was the living room of my grandparents. Well, they built this house in 1900. That bedroom right there off to my right is where my father was born. And so I bought this, been in our family the entire time. I bought the place from my cousin, who had bought it from one of my uncles as their age went on, and she got sick. So I bought it in 1996, and it was our place. This is the place that I grew up as a kid during the summer, and we'd hunt. It's a big Buckingham County, which is where I live in Central Virginia, is very rural. It's great hunting, fishing. It's a timber community, a lot of timber cutting and stuff like that. And I had my dad, we raised horses all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal was when I retired to come back here. And so in 2000, I took and refurbished this place I then built a house adjoining this house to be our home. I turned this into really kind of a library and if you look around the place now, you see it's kind of a museum of 50 years of cop work. And but I wanted to get back to horses again, so we got about 30 acres here, and I got 3 horses. I got a couple of chickens and bird and dogs, and so hunting and fishing, and that was how I grew up. My dad and I hunted and fished, and that was my life. Other than law enforcement is what I did. So when I came back here in 2000, I was going to retire in 2001, and then 9/11 happened, and we were at the Pentagon and all doing all that stuff in Fairfax, and so I decided to stay. So I finally retired in 2002, and I actually moved down here in 2001. Commuted. It's about a 2-hour drive, but I commuted for a year. The chief at the time, Tom Manger, who now is the chief at the Capitol Police, was at Fairfax as a chief, then went to Montgomery County and then retired, now as the Capitol Police. He allowed me as chief to live that 2 hours away for that 1 year so we could get through the 9/11 stuff.
Well, let's talk. We talked a little bit about legacy. So what do you think your legacy is that you're going to leave behind in the negotiation community, and what do you hope future negotiators get out of that?
I hope, well, the legacy that I'm leaving is that I've got 2 kids. I say kids, they're 50 years old, 40 and 50 years old, but I got 2 kids that are still doing it. One is actively doing negotiator stuff. He is very much in tune to what I taught and what I did. He would go to a lot of the training and do the stuff with me. So I hope that I'm able to leave some part of me still doing the work for some time to come. The second thing is I would like to be able to leave as a legacy an understanding of the true model that Schlossberg and Boltz and Isendorfer put together. And that is that 3-pointed, that triangle, if you will,
right.
Process, and how the commitment to that needs to be of qualified, capable people, appropriately trained and resourced, and working together. Because I'm telling you, I see it coming back. I see the necessity of this type work coming back. There were dry spells where it looked like hostage taking and barricading wasn't that big a deal. And now with active shooter and all that training, it seemed like it kind of drains that away. But I see it coming back in a lot of different ways as I keep my hand in the pot and follow the news and what's going on. So my hope is that we can take the standard that was originally developed and all the technology. The technology is wonderful. Yeah. And all of that technology, but maintain that standard to the level that was initially intended, because I'm telling you, it was a perfect process. We just need to add the technology and the new things we learn. But the model was perfect.
So looking back on your career, thinking back about it, was there anything you would change, or would you pretty much do everything same way? Or
no, I in the early days, the fight to show the model and the significance of the purpose of the model of those 3 elements working together was very, very much short-sold. The negotiators were seen as a delaying tactic or as a de-escalating tactic that was used until everybody got tired of it, and then they would just take off on it, not using it as what it was intended for, and that was the 3rd element, the significant element of finding us and bringing the situation to a resolution. So that really bothered me, and it's what I worked on. It was the Aunt Jen issue. It was the Simply Spaghetti issue. It was all of those. It was making sure that we understood the rigidness of the model, but with the flexibility of allowing each team to use their ultimate skill and everybody staying in their lane and doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, Bob, I just want to thank you for coming on our podcast. A lot of insights, a lot of great stories. I think there's definitely going to be a legacy that you've set forth for the new negotiators. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show. And that's all we have for this episode.
Well, I thank you for what you're doing. I follow you and what you're doing. As I said, in the early days, I was very, very much concerned about the number of people that were portraying our profession and as being experts and good at what they did, and they were not, but you are, and I appreciate it, and I follow what you do, and just stick to it. Don't let up. And if I can ever be able, you got a topic you want to discuss, we want to argue about with 3 or 4 other people, let me know. I still want to keep my hands in as close as I can. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, the good thing is you brought up TV episodes. That's something else we're going to dive into. Is we're going to pick apart some of those Hollywoodisms they portray the negotiators to hopefully.
Oh God, please, let's do that.
All right, Bob. Well, thank you for coming on.
God bless you, my man. Have a good rest of the year, would you?